Hello and welcome to replay review number 6. This one is going to be the review on Sentinel 3. It was sent to me by Lemadin, who is a 1000 ranked White Seraphim player. And his team is Icononyx, who is 1300 ranked Brown Cybrid, and McNeil, 1300 ranked Dark Blue Aeon, as well as 800 ranked Green UEF player Mortal. They're playing against Dark Matter, who is Blue UEF player, 1200 ranked, and he has the weird hobby to play a lot of Winter Duel, which is really strange, but to each his own. And Rola, you already know him from the game against Party Marty, a red 1000 ranked Aeon player. Death Squad, who is 1300 ranked Teal Siren player, and the Irishman, 1100 ranked Grey Siren player. And the game quality is at 95%. So we should be expecting some really good game. And Lemadin is unfortunately not familiar with the map-specific BO. Basically, I watched this replay and I realized that people don't know how to make use of the middle mass and the center. So I released this map-specific build order tutorial for the flag spot. Go watch it if you want to know how to start on this map, so you can have good eco and potentially even a snipe. So what Lemadin is doing wrong is basically he's not building the Nexus before the Hydra. That's usually going to result in a mass stall, and the only exception to this is when his teammate is overflowing mass. But you cannot know this beforehand. Some people build mass storages and won't overflow initially, and then he's going to mass stall. So you can see in this game it's working out. But generally, the more risk-averse version would be to build the 4 mexes before the Hydra, and engineer number 2, 3, and 4 would be building the Hydra, and the extra engineers start building mass storages. These mass storages allow you to store most of the mass that you reclaim in the center, because if you just go for mass structure upgrades, like Lemadin is doing now, he's going to power stall, and the storages have the advantage that you can spend some of the mass you're reclaiming and store the rest, whereas the extractor upgrades are just going to let you power stall, and you can spend a portion of the mass you're getting, but you're going to waste the rest. So you can see how important the opening BO is on this map. And it looks like Dark Matter has not been reclaiming, but instead focusing his gun on McNeil, and maybe, like, we could potentially see a draw here, since Dark Matter is still shooting at him, but it looks like Dark Matter is preparing to retreat into the water, which is probably a good thing to do against 3 ACUs. He doesn't want to die, so he's retreating, and McNeil is on low HP, but we can check if the opponent has air. So their air player is building their first air factory, and the others don't have air yet, so McNeil is going to stay alive. Even if Red made some T1 bombers now, they would not finish off McNeil, since in his base you can easily build some T1 anti-air and evade, right? But this is actually important. Dark Matter is using the build power of his ACU after it's on low HP for Naval Factory, and it may not be obvious to everybody that the front player goes Navy on this map, but that's actually how you're supposed to do it, because it allows you to outproduce the enemy if your enemy doesn't go Navy on the front spot. Rola is kind of on low HP, 4000 HP, and Dark Matter is on low HP, 3000 HP, and some T2 air could work out really well for Lemadin. So Lemadin watched the build order tutorial for Sentinel 3, and get some T2 Navy, T2 air around this timing. The minute 6, so should be a somewhat realistic timing to get T2 Navy, T2 air. And this could be sniping one of these players, right? And especially Dark Matter, he's like in the middle of nowhere, and he cannot retreat. So he's going to be here in like 90 seconds or something, and like 4 torpedo bombers could probably kill him before he goes to the land. But let's see what the Madden is doing instead. Looks like he's overflowing some mass, so these should be unpaused. You don't have to use your engineers to upgrade the mixes. You can use the build power the mixes have themselves too. And usually it's good to assist mixes, but if you have overflow like that, you should use the own build power. We have two engineers that were getting this expansion. This should be building either engineers to reclaim trees or Arty to hover and raid the enemy air production. And that's actually really a lack of scouting here. So you don't see what your opponent is doing, and it's minute 7 right now. That's actually bad. And there were two engineers building a naval factory. Usually I recommend to build relatively late naval, but lots of factories. So build like 4 or 5, since usually the travel time is kind of high. This doesn't apply to Dark Matter's setup, because he's building his naval factories in the center of the map. And it looks like McNeil has tried to harass the naval factories with T1 tanks, these, right? And that's not going to work. So T1 frigates are going to counter Aurora mass for mass, and they're actually also going to counter hover tanks mass for mass. So if you're planning to go for hover, that's usually not a good idea. The times where hover spam was really dominant is over, and that's a shame. So this really nice ping here, almost missed it. Mortal is trying to build his naval factory, it seems, and the frigate is raiding him. So that's a very nice frigate, and we can take a look at the global setup. And Dark Matter has 4 naval factories. Teal has 2 naval factories and another T2 naval factory. And this stuff is going to outproduce the right side of the bottom team for sure. Because McNeil doesn't have any navy, which is bad. So even when his ACU was on low HP, he should have used his engineers to send them over here and build some naval production. And looks like Green doesn't have any navy yet because of the good raid. So only Brown has navy. And Brown should be building air, not navy. So if I just take a look at this and I make an educated guess of how this game is going to end, I'm quite sure that the bottom team is going to lose, because 1.5 naval players against 3 naval players is just not going to work out. Lamadin is raiding with submarines here, and the Irishman is reacting with a torpedo tower. That's good. This torpedo tower is going to kill the submarines for sure, so the submarines should just be retreating. There's no value in trying to kill those torpedo towers. It's a bit like trying to send tanks against a walled PV. It's just not going to work. So Lamadin has actually donated some mass. This should be around 450 mass, and that's about the cost of 1 torpedo tower. So if I was the Irishman, I would go ahead and reclaim my torpedo towers as well as these submarines, and that's how I get even more eco than I had before. So McNeil's still feeding Aurora at frigates, but since there's a destroyer now, it's definitely over. But let's take a look at what Lamadin is doing, since this is his replay, right? So this is a very dedicated T1 power spam. I could be using this for T2 air. I could have been using this for T2 air a while ago, but now it's probably too late already. And these could be on T2. Yeah, since this is really a mistake. So each torpedo tower costs 450 mass, and you're not under attack. So you could see how Gray built his torpedo towers when he was under attack, but not before that. And you're building them, I don't know, expecting some raid or whatever. And that's a bit like building a symmetric large firebase. It's not going to work, it's not going to do anything. So all these can do is buy time against T1 Navy. It looks like the opponent is going to have T2 Navy soon, so these become redundant. And of course they come at the opportunity cost of not having mass upgrades, right? And these 4 are the same as having these 2 on T2. So really bad investment here. I finally landed on this island. Should be building radar here and PD here, so you can keep it for sure. And this hover RD spam is good. Should put it to infinite production, since Seraphim hover RD is really nice to have, and this can even harass the enemy naval production. So maybe go for a T1 air factory or even T2 and drop some hover early next to the naval production. Try to kill the naval factories and then push with your navy. This could work out. 19D, really? So one TND costs around 300 mass, which means you basically use the mass you could have put into 3 rings around T2 mixes for TND. And we didn't scout any TML, so that's just way too much, and it's not needed in this situation. On this map, you gotta know that if the opponent builds TML around here, you don't need TMD on the left, because the hill is going to block most of the TML. Right? You can see how high this is. So you only need some TMD on the right side, like here. Maybe build 1 here, or even 2, but that's enough, right? It's not like somebody has built 30 TML and is trying to snipe your, I don't know, T4 construction site or something like that. This is just complete overkill and not even needed in this situation. You got some T2 Navy here, which is good, but this could have been taken earlier, right? So there's a destroyer here, and you should surface this. You should submerge this. They can submerge. Seraphim destroyers have this ability. They work like submarine. And this is how you can avoid getting shot at by gunships. So just a reminder for next time. Shame this radar die. I will probably upgrade this factory to T2 support factory, because it's going to make it easier to keep this island. So next time, please upgrade this earlier. And as anticipated, the right side lost navy, and because we still have those four factories here for dark matter, so that's actually 3 factories and another T2 factory. And Teal has still gotten his T1 and T2 naval factories too. So Navy is lost for this side. And I think Brown hit his T3 air a little earlier than Rolla, but now he has been forced to dedicate more eco into Navy and build some torpedo bombers. And that made it impossible for him to keep his air production lead and make use of it by building strats. So Rolla has now air control, and this is mainly because the bottom team just had 1.5 naval players, while the top team effectively had 4 naval players. As you can see, Dark Matter is on the front spot building Navy, Teal is building Navy, and Red is assisting Gray's Navy, Gray is building Navy, and we don't have a lot of stuff here. And since Brown is also building some air, it's not going to be very easy for him to dedicate a lot of resources into Navy. So he's either going to lose Navy or air, and both is going to hurt. So that's maybe it's doing the right things, but it's not doing things right. The other players should be participating in a relevant way. So McNeil should be building Navy, and Lamadden should be building less defenses, because this TMD is really overkill. And it looks like he's even building some T2 torpedo towers. So basically, if the opponent has T2 Navy, T2 torpedo towers are not going to defend against the T2 Navy, because T2 Navy outranges the torpedo towers, just like MML outranges PD, and T2 torpedo towers are super expensive. They cost like 1,000 mass. So, little spoiler, I analyzed this replay, and over the course of this game, Lamadden used 15,000 mass on defenses. That's like a spider. And these defenses didn't really do anything except buy a little time, and they didn't even buy a lot of time. So, should be playing more aggressively and putting more into mobile units instead. That's just one T2 engineer building power generators. That's going to take forever. Probably a better idea to dedicate these engineers to support this engineer. Could reclaim some of the TMD, could reclaim these towers and these towers, could reclaim these wreckages, and that's how you can get RAS in a reasonable timing. Because right now it's minute 20, and we don't see any indication that the Madden has even tried to go for RAS. Usually you should treat T2 power as a RAS enabler, and unless you want to go for the combat path of your ACU, it's a good idea to always have RAS and ARAS. So if you don't want to use nano and the repair field to like assist your navy with it, it's a good idea to go for RAS instead. But this is a very tragic game again, because it has basically been over since quite a while for the bottom team. So the top team has such a huge production lead in Navy that the bottom team has no chance at recovering from this. And it's just a matter of time now until the top team builds some game enders and wins the game, right? So we don't see any experimental construction sites yet, but I don't think it's really needed, since the Salem destroyers can walk on the land and kill a lot of stuff. Plus we have air control, so our top team should be winning this for sure. This is usually the time where, as a Siren player, I will try to start my laser setup and either go for cloak and laser and try to like walk to the enemy side of the map and laser someone's base or ACU, or I will go for tailor laser, because there is not really any other way of winning this game by now. And Seraphim players should be yeah, it's very expensive to use Seraphim late game chiefs. Probably could be going for some extra T3 power generators, a quantum gateway, and tailor TML support ACU, but the Madden is nowhere near in a position to do that. These torpedo towers are at fault here, because that's basically multiple T3 maxes he has been spending on these towers, and they weren't even attacked, so it's not a good idea. And yeah, McNeil, you can't build T2 RD against enemy navy. It's not going to work out. So T2 RD is something you can do if you know that your allies are going to win in the end, and you just need to buy some time. But it's basically like a T2 firebase or T3 firebase. It buys time, it does nothing else, it's super costly, and ships are going to outrange or outmicro it. So another good way of using your eco should be building some navy instead. You can always, like even now, you can send some engineers to the bottom side of the map and build navy. Sniper bots are not going to work, because they're just going to feed veterancy to the enemy ships, and that's exactly the opposite of what you want. So as I said, this game is unfortunately over. There were many mistakes. Didn't use the middle reclaim, even though the bottom team got more than the top team. There was no snipe attempt at the low HP ACUs. The Madden didn't use any hover RD or transports to land hover RD at the enemy air. Definitely overbuilt defenses. Again, 15,000 mass on defenses you didn't need was just ruining the game. And the bottom team didn't have enough Navy players. So the middle player should go for Navy, and green in this game should have built the Navy earlier, and went for a more dedicated naval spam setup. Plus there was no upcycling in this game at all for some players, so green still has like T1 power, even building more, and the Madden kept his T1 power, kept his T2 power, didn't upgrade ARAS. These would be reasons why the game is lost, and they just add up, and this is what happens. So top team goes for GC and Spider. They didn't even pull their eco, they just got both at different timings from different economies, and it's still going to end the game, because the bottom team is nowhere in a position to counter this. We see a bug going up here, and another GC, so this is actually crazy. So much experimental spam, and you can see how a production can work out for you. So all the top team did is build a little more navy at the early stage of the game, had some additional Navy players, and that allowed them to like pressure the opponent and eco at the same time, while the bottom team was forced to react to the pressure instead of ecoing. And even as they reacted to the pressure, they didn't do so ideally. We had McNeil trying to counter Navy with T2 and T3 land, which didn't work, and we had Lamadin overbuilding defenses, and he basically used an experimental worth of mass in defenses, and these defenses are now getting overrun. And this is how this game ended very dramatically, I must say. And the experimental units are just getting crazy amounts of veterancy now. No attempts to control K some of the low value structures, and this is game over, right? So we can just sit here and wait until it's over. The bug is hitting the ships too. Air is completely lost. So this is defeat on all sides. I think Brown did actually okay. Like going for Navy was the right decision, since Green was already outproduced and he didn't go for Navy. But a single Brown guy is not enough to turn this game around. It takes more than that. These should be killing the gunships, I guess, but I don't think it matters at this point, because the Spider is just getting veterancy faster and the gunships are killing it. And people are probably just going to quit now. So yeah, very tragic game. I think the mass-specific BO was the most decisive factor here, and the second most decisive factor was wasting so much eco into defenses. So please try to do better next time, but thank you very much for sending this replay. I hope you learned something, and I'm looking forward to review more of your games.